Hello, my friend. Welcome to Reflections and Music, praying with singers, sinners, and saints. The Seven-Story Mountain, the autobiography of Thomas Merton, begins with these lines. On the last day of January, 1915, under the sign of the Water-Bearer, in the year of a great war, and down in the shadow of some French mountains on the borders of Spain, I came into the world. Free by nature, in the image of God, I was nevertheless the prisoner of my own violence and my own selfishness, in the image of the world in which I was born. Not many hundreds of miles away from the house where I was born, they were picking up the men who rotted in the rainy ditches among the dead horses and the ruined 75s in a forest of trees without branches along the River Marne. My father and mother were captives in that world, knowing they did not belong with it or in it, and yet unable to get away from it. They were in the world and not of it, not because they were saints, but in a different way, because they were artists. Thomas Merton would lose both of his parents at a young age. His mother died of stomach cancer when he was 6 years old. His father would die just before his 16th birthday. Merton continued at an English boarding school where he excelled and received a scholarship to Clare College, Cambridge. But he spent more time listening to jazz, drinking, carousing, and running up financial debts than studying. By the end of his freshman year, it was rumored that he had fathered an illegitimate child and eventually lost his scholarship. Merton journeyed to the United States and enrolled at Columbia University in January 1935. At Columbia, he became involved in literary activities and began writing novels, poetry, and book reviews. Although still somewhat of a carouser and party animal, he was searching for direction in his life and eventually found meaning in the Catholic Church. He applied to join the Franciscans order, but was considered a too recent convert, so he became a teacher at a Franciscan university, St. Bonaventure in upstate New York. He made a visit to the Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky during Holy Week of 1941, and by the end of the year returned there to live out his vocation and calling as a monk. The monastery abbot soon encouraged Merton to use his talents as a writer and to eventually write his autobiography, The Seven-Story Mountain, published in October 1948, quickly became an international bestseller. A stream of books on contemplative spirituality followed, and Merton, a secluded monk, became a voice for a new generation of believers. In 1955, he was appointed as Master of Novices at the Abbey, in charge of the spiritual formation of the large numbers of young men joining the community. Listen to a portion of one of his lectures on prayer.
Basically, I suppose, prayer should be as simple as breathing, as simple as living, as simple as just anything. But when we make a great issue out of prayer, that's one reason why I don't like to talk about prayer much, is as soon as you make an issue out of it, it tends to become confusing, it tends to get distorted. It becomes a cause, the great cause of prayer, and then it becomes opposed to something else, which is not prayer. And then you get into this break. Prayer is something sacred, and then you have other things which are secular, and you have to keep them apart, and that's a confusion. Because breathing is neither sacred nor secular. You just breathe. So prayer, too, should be neither sacred nor secular. I don't regard prayer as a specifically sacred activity. It's life. It is our life. It comes from the very ground of our life. I think it becomes a sacred activity when it gets to be quite public and formal and so forth. But, well, anyway, we should not divide prayer against the rest of our life.
In March 1958, Merton experienced an epiphany at the corner of 4th and Walnut while running errands in Louisville. This experience led Merton to turn his focus to a gradual return to the world. He started writing about issues such as peace, civil rights, nuclear disarmaments, technology, and the environment, as well as an openness to the gifts offered by other spiritual traditions. In 1968, he received an invitation to give the keynote address at a conference in Bangkok, Thailand. On this trip, he met the Dalai Lama, who would later write that it was Thomas Merton who introduced him to the real meaning of the word Christian. On December the 10th, 1968, after giving his keynote address at the conference, Merton died tragically, electrocuted by faulty wiring on a fan in his room, only 53 years old. His body was flown home on a plane that also carried American soldiers who had died in the Vietnam War. He was buried on December the 17th at Gethsemane with a simple cross marking his grave. One of Merton's prayers comes from his book, Thoughts in Solitude, and it is a prayer that I return to often for solace and guidance. I read this prayer once at a roll call devotion I gave at the Aero Medical Squadron at the Air National Guard Base in Nashville. Most of the men and women present had been deployed in the war and had medevaced wounded soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan to the Army Hospital in Germany, so they had witnessed the horrors of war. When I finished the prayer, they broke out in applause. It was the only time my roll call devotions received such a response.
My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have the